Welcome to Science Saturday. I'm going to try and do something a little different today, a little longer potentially, but we're going to look at the recent Huberman and Whitman podcast, where it was all about oral health. There was a lot of good things and some questionable things in this interview, and I don't expect this critique to go to nearly as many people. I mean, the 5 of you that see this can't compare to the millions that watch Huberman, but it's a start. So what I'm going to do is, recently, Dr. Stacy Whitman was on the Huberman podcast, and it's a almost 3-hour video interview where they cover a whole host of topics, from the oral microbiome to diet and oral health to regular dental care, mouth taping, toothpaste, oil pulling, nasal breathing, airway importance, the joint, the muscles. It's a wide-ranging interview that unfortunately lacks a lot of nuance for a number of the topics. So let's dig into some of these and see what we can come up with. So first, the good things. They talked about the importance of the oral microbiome, the bugs in the mouth, and the balance of the different types of bugs is really important for controlling caries and gum disease, and may be impactful in other areas. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But a lot of what you get in your mouth comes from your parents. So when you were a baby, you got inoculated by your parents from different things that went in your mouth, to being kissed by family members. That impacts what you have even today. You can then impact that as well through a variety of choices. The point being here that the makeup of the bugs in your mouth can matter. And there are tests for that. When we're talking about salivary diagnostics, which is also a topic they talk about in a couple different ways, there's not nearly as much as we can gain from that as we can from blood tests for systemic health, but there are some valuable things. So your dentist can take a saliva sample and send it in and get a breakdown of the types of bugs, quantity of those bugs that are in your mouth, your saliva. And that can be valuable to know because it can increase caries risk or decrease caries risk. We can learn a few other things about risk for HPV. There are some genetic markers we're starting to be able to test that may have some beneficial impact in knowing. It's still a bit early to be able to say it's a definite cause and effect with some of those outlying tests. All right, number 2, diet and oral health. This is a big one. It's not just sugar. Hopefully by now everybody knows that sugar is not good for your teeth. It's not just the sugar, it's also how the sugar is used by the bugs that are in your mouth. And it's the frequency that may have even greater impact, because every time we put something in our mouth, we get a drop in the pH. So it becomes more acidic in the mouth. And it's really that acidity that causes problems. And they talk about this in the podcast. They do a pretty good job of talking about the value of the types of foods, the pH, and how that impacts our oral health, especially caries risk. And that ties in then to a recommendation for gum chewing. So there's kind of this double-edged sword that they bring up in the podcast about gum chewing being good for after meals. It helps to bring saliva quicker into the mouth to help manage the pH and clean out some of the stuff from around it, in between and on the teeth. So that's the good thing, assuming it's sugar-free gum. But then they talk about how bad gum chewing is for the joint. And this is where the research kind of goes a little bit sideways. We don't have good data showing that gum chewing causes cartilage breakdown in the joint. If somebody's already at risk, if you have a degenerating joint or a problem with the disc or bones of the joint assembly, gum chewing is not for you. If you don't have that problem, then gum chewing is not a concern. It's like any other joint in your body. Use it. That's a good thing. We know now, for example, that running doesn't destroy the cartilage in your knees. It actually helps keep it stronger. So what if that's similar for our joint here? And gum chewing ultimately in a healthy individual has a positive impact. We just don't know that. And then the other thing they talk about is dental care. Seeing your dentist and hygienist regularly, making sure things are being evaluated. You can catch problems early. One area they talk about is treating early cavities. Interestingly, she makes the claim that you have to see a board certified functional dentist or something like that. Well, functional dentistry is not a specialty in dentistry. That is just a nonsense term. She's probably had some certification in functional medicine, and that now is what she's using. But any dentist can treat early caries. As long as it's only in that outer enamel layer, it can be treated in a number of ways. They talk about a few of those in the episode, but any dentist can treat that. And you don't have to go to a special dentist. That's nonsense. The benefit of going to see your dentist regularly, so we do x-rays. We're looking for those early incipient cavities. We're looking for the early signs of gum disease so it can be treated easier and effectively, and trying to keep that mouth healthy, to keep all of you healthy. Tying into that, they talked about the ingredients in toothpaste and being associated with aphthous ulcers. I thought that was a fascinating piece that could be really helpful for people, so I want to reiterate that. There is some pretty decent evidence going back about 30 years now that shows a relationship for people that are at risk for aphthous ulcers, that the sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS, ingredient in most toothpaste can exacerbate the frequency of those ulcers. So going to an SLS-free toothpaste can be helpful in reducing your aphthous ulcer frequency by like 2/3. So kind of cool. All right. Let's get into some areas that there was a lot of confidence about in the episode, but not a lot of evidence. So first is this whole idea of mouth taping and nasal breathing. This has really gone overboard. There are benefits to nasal breathing, no doubt, especially in kids and development and development of the face, the sinuses, the oral structures, bones, etc. There is benefit there. Once we're adults, though, there is no benefit in performance to nasal breathing. That the research just doesn't exist to demonstrate performance benefits. Are there health benefits? This is where we have a big maybe. There could be benefit in some people, and there may be not much benefit. So research is kind of varied in this and hard to nail down a definitive answer. What this has done, though, in my opinion, is created sleep hypochondriacs. It's created an anxiety around sleep that shouldn't be there. And sleep is important, we know that, but you don't have to tape your mouth in order to breathe through your nose to get adequate sleep. With that said, if you think you are having problems sleeping, if you are snoring, please go see somebody. A dentist can do a home test now, see a professional pulmonologist, ENT, a number of different areas can evaluate for sleep. That can be really helpful. Okay, another issue, recommendation from the episode was charcoal toothpaste. Again, just kind of silly. A lot of whitening toothpastes are using abrasives to do the whitening, so that can be detrimental over time because toothpaste can be extremely abrasive, and when used incorrectly, can really destroy teeth. So be really careful about whitening toothpaste, whether it's charcoal or anything. Really, if it's a whitening toothpaste, it's got abrasives in it. And try to stick to less abrasive toothpaste. Surprisingly, baking soda is less abrasive. So if you can get a toothpaste that's just a basic baking soda, maybe some peroxide for the whitening. That's the other thing they talk about in the episode. They don't like peroxide, but peroxide and even bleach used appropriately can be really helpful for beneficially adjusting the oral bacteria. Okay, next up, oil pulling. This is just more nonsense. There is no reason to do oil pulling. There is a little bit of evidence to suggest that oil pulling, doing vigorous swishing with oil, can form an emulsification that can have a cleansing effect to the mouth, but you're having to do that for upwards of 10 to 20 minutes. It makes no sense when you can brush your teeth for 2 to 4 minutes and have a better result. So oil pulling, save that for your car. Let's move to the oral bacteria and systemic disease. So this one, there is a lot of news articles about and people wanting to claim that oral bacteria are causing heart attacks and strokes and diabetes and dementia and all kinds of things. But the evidence just doesn't meet the threshold for causality at this point. We've got a lot of associations. These are well documented in hundreds of studies that show associations between gum disease and cardiovascular disease and stroke and preterm birth. But these are observational or cross-sectional studies which can show correlation but not causation. So here we need to apply our baloney detection kit. You could do that to the whole episode, actually. Number of places that it would be really beneficial. And start talking about a biological plausibility now. So it's plausible. We have a causal pathway. So the bacteria from the mouth, they get into the bloodstream. I mean, it's all connected anyway. So it's all happening regularly. And so your bacteria from anywhere in your body can end up in your mouth and vice versa. But the biological plausibility does not equal proof. You can build a good sounding model out of marshmallows and duct tape, but that doesn't mean that it's going to fly. So let's use something more official than just my opinion. Bradford Hill, criteria for causation. So what is that? So the Bradford Hill criteria is the framework for separating stuff that happens to go together from stuff that actually causes another thing. So Sir Austin Bradford Hill was an epidemiologist and statistician in around 1965. He came up with this criteria. And it was from a paper, The Environment and Disease, Association or Causation. And that led him to create a rigid checklist. So it doesn't mean that it's for sure, but it's a nice checklist that we have that measures 9 things. So strength, consistency, specificity, temporality, biological gradient or dose response, plausibility, coherence, experiment, and analogy. So if we take these and apply them to our oral systemic link topic, first, strength of association is moderate based on the research. Our consistency is high. We have multiple populations that this has been demonstrated on. How about specificity? It's low. We're relating oral disease to almost anything and everything. How about temporality? It's mixed. Longitudinal studies are quite limited. Our biological gradient, so there's some evidence that worse perio means worse outcomes. Plausibility is quite strong. We talked about that already. Experiment is weak. So randomized controlled trials are having a rough time confirming for us. And then finally, analogy is moderate. So what that means, causality is not confirmed yet. But the jury's still out. We still have research to do. So what does the research show? So treating gum disease has shown a reduction in some inflammatory markers in some people. It can improve glycemic control in diabetics. But there's no consistent evidence that it reduces strokes, heart attacks, or dementia rates. Then we look at the systematic reviews that have been released by both Cochrane and the American Heart Association that have concluded there's insufficient evidence to determine whether periodontal therapy prevents atherosclerotic vascular disease. How about dementia? Some studies have found a specific oral bacteria, P. gingivalis, in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. But again, that being there doesn't demonstrate cause. And treating gum disease has not shown any reduction in dementia risk. Okay, we have a compelling connection, but no proof of causation. So let's be a little bit more careful about how confident we talk about these connections in trying to scare people into doing treatment. What else do we have? I think that covers it. Oh, one more thing. Huberman drinking his yerba mate tea. Likely not good for the teeth. Most yerba mate tea is going to be at a pH 6 or below. So every sip is making the mouth more acidic, increasing caries risk, even if it's sugar-free. So there you go, buddy. So what do you think? What did you think of the episode if you watched all 3 hours? Was it good, bad, indifferent? What did you take away that you think will be helpful? Was there a piece that I left out that you want me to dig into more deeply? If there is, throw me a comment. See what we can do. This has been Science Saturday. See you tomorrow.